Alrighty, good morning. Hello, and thank you for taking part in 2021's DiverseU Building Community. Before we begin, I would like to note that we're recording each DiverseU session so that we can make them accessible after the event is over. Please keep in mind as you engage in the space that your questions and comments will be included in the recording. DiverseU is a celebration of diversity. I'm sure we're all eager to find out what we learned by attending these sessions, but first a few ground rules. This is an important student-led program that creates learning spaces where people from various disciplines can facilitate discussions and engage in an academic setting. DiverseU is an opportunity to engage in civil discourse and dialogue through listening and learning. The ground rules are in place to assist our presenters in maintaining dignity and respect in those spaces. So, here are a few guidelines for participating in the discussion and how we can better serve and respect this learning experience for everyone involved. Guideline 1. Communicate direct personal experience and not secondhand experiences. In doing so, we rely on I statements like I was affected by an incident where, or I know in my own life I experienced. Guideline 2, speak for yourself, not as a representative of any group or any person. Along the same idea, do not single out anyone to be an expert in order to speak on behalf of the group. Guideline 3, if you do wish to reference studies outside of your own experience, we invite you to cite academic studies collected from various academic journals and databases available from Mansfield Library. Guideline 4, be respectful and courteous through each presentation, whether you agree with the presenter or not. Our central mission here is civil discourse. Be mindful of the amount of space you're taking up and allow others to share in the dialogue. Guideline 5, be mindful that many of the presenters are in a place of vulnerability due to the personal nature of each topic. As an institute of higher learning, we depend on the student conduct code to ensure each presenter is treated with dignity and respect. Guideline 6, active listening is more than hearing. It is expressed in our presence in the room. Based on this factor, we ask that while in the learning space, you silence your phone. If you do need to text or talk on the phone, we ask that you respectfully step outside of the meeting space to tend to those communications. So, there you have it, friends. 6 relatively simple guidelines and expectations for conduct in these spaces. These rules apply to individuals and groups that are not students, and we will enforce them should poor conduct occur from any person. Thank you for coming, and I'll turn it over to our amazing presenters to begin.
I have a quick question for process. Should I turn the video on?
I think that's up to you.
Coming around here.
And I think it's
Yeah.
there too.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you everybody for coming today to our presentation. We are Critical Advising Practices for Equity, also known as CAPE, and we are going to chat a little bit about our committee, which is a subcommittee of the Advising Council. But really the point of the session is to open up to people like you to provide feedback on the quality of advising at UM and just what your experience is with advising at UM. So my name is Morgan Curtin, and I'm an academic advisor for the Department of Teaching and Learning in the College of Education.
My name is Ben Hammond. I am the advisor for the Nonprofit Administration Undergraduate Minor and Certificate in the Department of Public Administration Policy.
I'm Charity Atterbury. I'm the Director of Student Services and Registrar in the Alexander Lewis III School of Law.
Also, I'm Violet Hopkins. I'm a transfer advisor in the Office of Undergraduate Advising.
My name is Joseph Brady. I'm a secondary academic advisor with Montana 10, and I use he, him pronouns.
She, her. She, her.
Yeah.
She, her. Like a nice song. I like that. Cool. So just a little bit of background on CAPE. So this is our mission statement. Critical Advising Practices for Equity seeks to break down academic advisor bias, power, and privilege to instill, practices, that's supposed to say, for equity. There's a lot of issues in here. Anyways, it's copy pasted weird. Authentic, equitable, and intersectional anti-oppression identity in the advising community for the service of empowering all students to achieve their full potential on campus, accessible to and inclusive of all. So minus all the errors in this, you can kind of get the point of our mission statement here. Sorry for the copy paste. Yeah.
Advising and registration right now?
Yeah. These are our current members. We're always open to new members. So if anybody here wants to join, we're also looking for students to join. But as you can see, we have quite an array of people from, the law school, from the registrar's office, from different advising units on campus, from secondary advising units, and even experiential learning and career success. So I think we have a pretty good team together, but like I said, we're always looking for more. Director of Advising?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so at the University of Montana, we have kind of a decentralized advising model. I know there are plenty of advisors who are here who are pretty well in the know. But advising breaks down basically into primary advisors. So if you're undeclared, that's the Undergraduate Advising Center, and then your major specific advisors. So for example, if you're an education student, you meet with Morgan. Secondary advisors, so these are minor advisors. So me, for example, Joseph with Montana 10, athletics, honors, trio student support services. And then faculty advisors and mentors, those are within departments. But then advising happens for students in other spaces as well, whether that's family, friends, partners, RAs in the residence halls, or your peers or colleagues. So advising really can come from a wide range of spaces.
So why did we start, Kate? Do you want to take this out since you're at the slide?
Can't read the slide from here.
Okay.
But you can basically read the board. But CAPE was more or less started to address the systemic inequities that we often see and biases within the culture of advising practices in the young community. Students and staff saw a need for a different approach to advising that not only meets the student where they are, but provides a holistic and realistic advising experience. We developed an advising class module to make equity and individual bias central to advisor training, and we are committed to the implementation of best practices in these areas throughout the advising community at UM and extending them to all employees who work with students.
So really CAPE started to just be this continuous process to check in on advising and to see where advisors might need some training to grow and what students need. Really, we're shaped around the student experience, which is why we're doing this today, to get some input to see like what our next move should be as CAPE. And I think everybody here also has a personal story on why they decided to join CAPE. I know for me, I thought it was really interesting that the quality of advising can vary so drastically on campus. Like you can walk into one advisor's office, have a certain experience, and walk into another advisor's office and have a different experience. And you know, I think that's a product of the decentralized model, which has a lot of benefits because you can advise in your own individual way and make it unique to you and your student. But because of that, also sometimes there are some gaps that you might not know that you're missing. So CAPE is here to kind of fill in those pieces and figure out how we should move forward to just make it a little bit more equitable and a little bit, I don't want to say like quality control, but that's the only word that ever comes to mind. But just make sure that you have at least the same base experience when you walk into each advisor's office on campus. Okay, and then one of our, I think, greatest accomplishments so far is that we added an advising certificate to our training to the advising certificate called Critical Advising Practices for Equity. Advisors on campus are mostly required to do this certificate program, and it's all online. So these are our learning outcomes for that training. Really what happens is the advisors go through stuff and they learn about their own personal bias, power, and privilege. They learn about institutional bias, power, and privilege, especially thinking about higher ed. So like the whiteness of higher ed is really what that section's on. And then there's also a kind of what's next. So how can we move forward at UM to figure out how to kind of come past these things and to make things more equitable for students, staff, and faculty. Oh. Okay, so we have a poll everywhere. So we're going to start off kind of an anonymous, more so situation, and then we'll go into individual experiences if anybody wants to share. This is my first time using poll everywhere, so I apologize if it's not, I'm not the best at it. Okay, cool. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions before we start.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
totally.
gonna answer this at the front desk. Are the sessions being recorded, do you know?
Yes, they are.
And they will be broadcast later, like if I want to share this with a colleague.
Is it on
Yeah.
YouTube or?
We'll probably put it on the website.
Every single session is automatically recorded.
Cool. So let me go to here. Okay, so if you would like to, I think it will remove, you can either go to pollev.com/Morgan Curtin 085, or you can text Morgan Curtin 085 to this 37607 number, and just select if you are a graduate student or an undergraduate student. We'll give it a few minutes here. I think I have this going correctly. Is this right? Yep. Okay.
You should have thought to have it
Yes, yes. If you are an advisor, make a mental note of that.
And once you get logged in, if we do have other questions, so you won't have to log in every time. It's just going to track your responses. So
Yeah, yeah, if you're an advisor, you can just choose graduate. Oh, yeah. The questions will get more interesting than this, too, I promise.
this is important though, because advising happens at all of these levels and it looks both similar and different at all of those levels, right?
Okay. Still see people on their phones, so I'm not sure if we're taking another second here. I think so. They should definitely have a QR code for this. It's probably in the paid version. Okay, cool. 50-50. Wonderful. Okay. Our second question is, what is your current class standing? Again, advisors can click graduate student. She could see how many people are logged on. Okay. Nice countdown. 5, 4, 3.
Is it possible
Two.
to screen share the poll?
One. Oh, I thought it is. Uh-oh.
We thought we had. We will get that taken care of.
Is it doing it?
If you're on Zoom, can you give us an emoji or a?
Is it?
Can't see anything still, guys.
Have you seen anything this whole time?
We have not seen anything.
Okay, well, they told me to put the PowerPoint on here, so I'm gonna guess that's the problem. Yeah. I have to log in. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Are these two things, I wonder, connected? Because somebody logged into their personal Zoom. And then this Zoom is room 330. And so I don't even know if it's on the same Zoom image.
We're troubleshooting here, Zoom. Forgive us for the delay here.
I can just- The craziness of multiple computers.
Very kind moment that I have. Why?
It's important to understand your limitations.
Okay, ask me that question later.
This is why I teach analog. On its way.
Okay, I think that somebody signed in to their personal account and then there's like the other account in here, so I think it's under 2 accounts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Julie.
Yeah, okay, that's what this one is.
Okay.
Okay, people on Zoom, can you see this now?
Yay.
Yay, wonderful. Okay, well, we'll give the Zoom people a few seconds here to type in again that code either on the web or you can text it as well, and you can get that meeting has ended after 40 minutes. The camera, but I don't think they had it to begin with. So
No, someone said that they have.
Oh.
They could see it.
whatever, this is better. So
Do we need to go back to the first?
that is the first question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so now back to the second. I'll put it up here.
I guess you guys aren't sharing the presentation.
There's two different Zooms on.
It should be, both should be the same Zoom.
Nah, somebody came in and logged on Zoom to their personal one, and then this one just timed out because it was not running for 30 or 40 minutes. So, but I think we can just, it's not connected to that camera, but I don't think it ever was. So,
It was.
It was. Oh, so you want me to get this one back on Zoom?
yeah, if you want to, yeah, that's fine. Sweet. Oops, oh, no, sorry.
Give me the Zoom number.
Okay, anyways.
Nine nine four.
Just a second. I gotta open it here.
Thanks for bearing with us,
Oh,
everybody.
no, it's not possible. Okay, I'm sorry. Now what is the number?
994
994
309
309
307
307.
14.
Do you want me to share this or?
There is Sharon on here now.
Oh,
so
that-
it's
that'll-
okay.
that'll-
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Sorry about
No,
that.
no,
No,
thank you
it's
so
all right,
much.
thank
Yeah, cool. Okay, and now, yes, for the people on Zoom, a few minutes here to fill out that second poll. Yeah, which is good. Okay. Okay. How often do you engage with an academic advisor in the semester? So note that this does not need to be your primary academic advisor or somebody even assigned to your account, but some advisor on campus. This could be, again, the primary, secondary, or faculty advisor or mentor.
And if you're attending in a role as an advisor in some capacity, maybe give us an average of what you meet with students.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
I like this fight. between them. Okay, awesome. And what do you go to an advisor for? And you can select multiple on these. In 1 to 2 words, describe your first advising experience, and this could be good, bad, and ugly. It could be or, just 1 to 2 words. First thing that comes to mind. Oh, those.
Those are all fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
And fine is definitely. Middle row. Okay, cool. And just a few more here, and like I said, then we'll open it up. So what do you want from an advisor? What are some qualities you think are important that an advisor has, or what are you seeking when you go to an advisor? What do you think of when you think of an advisor? I like these answers so far. And then our final question is, what do you need from an advisor? So a little bit different here.
Or, you know, how many times we've heard that.
And legitimately,
Yes.
Cool. So thanks for filling that out. We just wanted to get like a general gauge of what you feel, like your advisor's role is, how you play into that, and just some general demographic information as well. But really this time we wanted to dedicate to you sharing an experience you've had in advising at UM, or anything that you would like to tell us that can help guide us as CAPE. We are open to really anything. We want to provide training opportunities and resources and materials and really whatever we can to the advising community to ensure that all students are receiving what they need. I'm especially interested in like that financer, that little sad slanty face one. I would love to hear from you to just hear what's going on. I don't know, as an advisor, I don't know what the student experience is right now. And yes, we would like to know.
And sharing like positive experiences too, so we know like what's going well for you. Like if you have a great advisor who's doing really good work for you, like share with us why that person is so impactful. Like what methods do they use that really speaks to you too.
anyone on Zoom can just hop in too.
Yeah, it can be a chat. And you don't have to say your name or anything. We can just read the questions or comments.
I can start too, just so like going out the room. When I was in undergrad, I was in a program where you do your first 2 years of gen eds, and then you apply to the program that you want to be, and you spend your last 2 years doing that program. And so when I got to, I can't even tell you to this day like who my gen ed advisor was. They didn't make an impact at all. And then when I got to my major advisor, they knew nothing about gen eds. And so by the time it got to the time when I went to graduate, I still needed a natural science at the lab. And so I wound up taking a chemistry class the summer that I was trying to graduate. And that was really stressful because I felt like there was a gap in between the service that I'd received in the beginning and the advising that I'd received in the end. And so I always, like in my advising practices, really try and spend a lot of time trying to bridge that gap too, like in admitting when I don't know something and getting a person to an advisor who is more solid in the areas where I lack, just because of my own personal experience.
think that's a really great story. And again, with decentralized advising at I can see that being a thing because some advisors cover, this area of things while others cover the other side of things. So it's hard to see like what hasn't been overlapped in the middle. Try to, I would say, go for overlap instead of gapping it and just assuming knowledge. So.
And no shade to that advisor too, because they just were an expert at what they were an expert at. It just wasn't natural science genetics.
I think that's something in my experience as an advisor in a number of different types of advisor roles, that's something to think about too, when you're thinking about your own advising experience, maybe comparing it with others. Because of the decentralized advising model, you might have multiple advisors throughout your entire time here, whether that's 4 years or 5 years. You might have one advisor that's your primary advisor for the first 2 years, and then you declare a major, or you start in a professional program and then you work with another person. You might have some combination of that. And so it looks really different, and there are reasons for that that can be really positive, but it can also mean, much like Morgan said, what you receive as far as advising goes in one office may look totally different if you go down the hall. And that's just something to keep in mind. But if you're hearing things that are really good about someone else's experience or your own experience, those are the things to talk about, regardless if it's a secondary or supportive advisor role or a faculty advisor role or mentor.
I guess I'm curious, like, for those of you who are here, what brought you here today? What about like the title of this DiverseU presentation made you like want to come? Like there must be, I would assume, some story there, or maybe you're just really interested in becoming an academic advisor and you're like, this is a great first step, but like what brought you here today? Yeah.
Hearing what some of your experiences have been, and I guess in the context of what started, what brought you to this particular, what problems, or what the practice. I want to hear a little bit from the trenches as it were.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
And I'll be happy to kick that off. I spent years working in TRIO student support services, not as an academic advisor, as a program coordinator. But TRIO, I think much like Montana 10, are small programs that are able to really give holistic advising to students. One of the pull everywhere responses to what do I need to see the whole need. That's really kind of the model that TRIO and I think Montana 10 are really in place to try to give to students. And I've seen wonderful success stories with that model. But I also think that TRIO student support services is capped at 300 students. Montana 10, I think, is capped at 100 students.
Initially 200.
Initially 200. Okay, my bad. That leaves thousands of students who are not in an advising system that is designed to give them that. But I think that all students can benefit from that, which is really why I was drawn to this committee, is to try to kind of facilitate within the advising community as a whole, while recognizing that not all advisors have the same resources, or many have much larger advising roles, but even small ways that we can move as a community toward giving students that more holistic, seeing them for who they are individually and understanding how, finding ways to tailor advising to that individual and their needs. I think that's a noble goal, and that's really what brought me today.
We just keep going this way? Is that help? Yeah. And I know, again, we have other advisors and people in these roles, so feel free to share too. I will say, so I'm very interested, sorry, you've heard me talk about this like a weekend ago. But through NACADA and other professional organizations related to advising, I think there's a lot of really good research, a lot of good literature, a lot of good effort, good work happening around understanding in particular equity and doing that equity work within the advising community, the advising role. But a lot of it feels 30,000 feet because it's theory and it doesn't, and it's important. Education is so important, right? But we need to move to practice in order to get to systems change. And then it's this process of going back and forth between those three nodes, right? And so for me, I love the NACADA stuff. I love thinking about it. It makes me excited, but I want to know how that translates to the work that we do, like the boots on the ground work that we do with students. Because I'll often find that whatever some beautiful theory purports to work really well that I read about doesn't necessarily work for students at UM based on where they're coming from, their educational experience, their life experiences, my life experiences, right? So this is an opportunity to learn from colleagues, learn from students to best meet the needs of the students that we work with, and understanding that, again, there are similarities that we can learn from that can benefit us in our roles, but there are ways that we should be paying attention to the unique Montana, University of Montana student experience. And so this was a place to talk through some of that and try to put into practice in small ways some really meaningful change or consistent practices.
I come to advising that actually was a student when I walked into this role. And much of my history is in student affairs. And I've worked in and off campus for years. I was working toward 2 degrees, one in Native American Studies and one in social work. And so when I was offered this opportunity, for me it was, okay, what kinds of things could I have used as a student? So like really start practical kind of thinking around that. How can I be the best advisor to myself in this role? And one thing I found surprising about the questions was on the financial aid piece, because within Montana 10, we focus much on the biopsychosocial aspect of student experience here on campus, providing, you said, those holistic sort of supports. And one of the things that we were hit with immediately was the financial aid question. Now, I know for me as a student, that was a really, really big hit. Understanding, navigating, where to go, who to talk to, what is this form? I didn't turn in what form. There was so much that it was sort of fitted in there. I've heard other colleagues use the term hidden curriculum when talking about the higher ed experience. And I think financial aid is one of those pieces. And so for the first 2 months of actual freshmen coming in and being in our space, that was the #1 thing that we addressed was financial aid, how to navigate that. Some of the questions that even students kind of felt maybe a little embarrassed, like, I feel like I should know this. And we kept reassuring students, it's like, we don't even know this stuff. We've been around for a while. So like it's assisting in those kinds of ways, particularly as a social worker, is recognizing the gaps and then doing what we can to kind of fill it. And, network, and I know that I've worked with everyone here in this space with our students. So there's a lot of like overlapping and sharing of students and experience and so forth. But I think what Bennett mentioned earlier was what we're seeing from this is a real need for this kind of advising in this space, because students, there's a lot to navigate, and there's an emotional experience with it. There's a lot of lack of assurance and so forth. There's people's personal stories that they bring in where there's difficulties navigating the space. There's mental wellness and so forth that's also fitted in there. And so I think for me as a social worker, this seemed like a real great opportunity to get into this space and try and be as much help as possible along the way, kind of unburden some other advising from some of those roles, and then supply the students with, I think, some of those resources that they need. So part wayfinding, part support, and then also part of the sort of practical direction.
Yeah, and for me, it's threefold. It's what I talked about earlier about the different advising experiences students have on campus. It's also, I was one of the initial people that kind of got CAPE off the ground. So my undergraduate degree is in history and African American studies. So equity has always been something I'm really interested in. And as I became an advisor, I felt torn. Like I love advising, but like this passion I have, I feel like is missing from it. So I wanted to bridge the two together. And then really my third reason is more on like the advisor side of things. And I just realized that, like I have a little bit of training in some of these things like bias, power, and privilege, but I was still like, I don't want to say flawed, but like I have my own like human experience. And because of that, there's bias that I have in each and advising appointment. And I wanted to explore that more and also make it aware to other advisors that, when a student walks in the room beforehand, you see what their GPA, their transcript, the courses they've taken. And so you have kind of like this preconceived notion of them. So how can you take that preconceived notion and still advise them as equitably as possible and like not like say like, well, I see that they've failed Math 115 before, so they'll never be successful at math, right? Like we all, whether we like it or not, have these kind of thoughts. And I just wanted to explore it more. And like I said, make it aware to other advisors that there's a power dynamic in this relationship that we hold. And through that power dynamic, we are kind of making like a path of the student's educational experience by saying, yeah, you should take this class, or you might not be as successful in this class. And really, to what degree does this power like rob students of their full educational potential is what I wondered. So I know that's on the more extreme side of things, and our bias hopefully isn't, like totally doing anything that negative, but really it does play a role in it. And I just think we need to know that. We need to know how to like combat our biases and like just make ourselves more aware. So we aren't saying you should take this really easy path of school and then recommending another student take a really challenging, rigorous path of school. So.
Yeah, for me, I feel like so often the college experience is sort of crafted around a traditional age 18-year-old freshman who's coming here and they've had a particular kind of life and a particular the expectation is, that they're coming here, they're going to come to orientation with 2 parents, maybe a 1.5 sibling, and you have this experience. So it's really interesting to me as a transfer advisor to wade into the world of the transfer non-traditional experience and how that looks for different groups of people. In my lens, the lens that I carry with me is a very deeply socioeconomic one, and nobody ever asked me. I happened to have a child while I was doing my undergrad, and that was never part of the conversation, right? It wasn't a conversation about, do you have a work schedule to work around? Do you have a childcare schedule to work around? Like, what are you capable of? It was mostly just like, you're going to do this experience in this way, and you're going to take these classes, and then you're going to do your student teaching, and too bad it doesn't pay, so you're going to have to work at night while you teach all day for free, and and then finding childcare, right, for all of that. So like I said, that's the lens I come to, and it really helps me to work through my trauma of that, but also build that toolkit that I have to help students have that alternative, not even alternative, their normal college experience, and normalize the college experience for everybody, regardless of where they're plugging into college.
A great question. Any other questions or things we want to share? What else brought you here today?
Zoom folks, why are you here?
Zoom folks and room folks.
Yeah,
I just wanted to rhyme. I'm sorry.
Forgive me.
So my name is Becca. Hear from the other advisors, your experiences, what their current experiences, what they experience in the past, and for each, what is important to help them feel successful. And as an advisor, what can I do to engage with other advisors, with students, with everyone to help support my students and so that's pretty much me. And I was really excited to take support from everyone.
I think someone said earlier, and forgive me that I don't remember if it was Violet or Joseph, but I think that one of the most important things we can do as a community, an advising community, is to understand when to reach out to other advisors. Actually, I think there's a combination of what both of you said that has me thinking right now. Understanding where our gaps are in what we know. For example, I am probably not going to be the best at talking with a student about financial aid, but I know people who are. I know that I can reach out to Violet, has a pretty good sense of it, I think. Other people in the UAC do. But I also know people in financial aid, who, that's another piece of power that we have that is available to us as advisors, power that we can use to the benefit of our students, is really digging in with the folks that we know, that we interact with, just our colleagues in other departments. And so I think just really working to recognize when those times arise and where, when to go to someone else to realize that I don't have the best answer, but I know someone who does, and just not being afraid to. I think it's beneficial for students to see that from us as advisors, like, oh, you're not just selling me a bill of goods, you're admitting that you don't know the answer, but you're getting me the answer. I just think it's invaluable to use all of the resources that we as advisors have.
I often will walk my students to somewhere in the building because I'm like, no, I don't know the answer. Let's go find out. Let's go ask a human. And oftentimes it's Ruth in business services, but oftentimes, yeah, it's somebody, a friend of mine in financial aid. But having those connections across campus, I think is really important. So you can have a reliable human to go to walk a student to and be like, help me, I don't know the answer.
What was your exam working in saying, like, it's okay not to know something, it's okay to ask for help. And even if you're someone who's supposed to know, like, I students become here, like, Dr., what do I do? And I'm like, I have no idea, let's figure it out together, right? And so connecting with your colleagues and modeling that for students too, if that's helpful for them. And I know when I was a student, I had an advisor and I was like, hey, what do I do? They're like, I don't know, figure it out. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And I don't really know what to do with that, right? And then I kind of moved through school and academia thinking I need to know what I'm supposed to do and I don't have to go and to anyone to help me. And then I learned, oh wait, I can't actually. So yeah, it's a big part of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sprawling bureaucracy. It's sprawling for students, but it is also sprawling for those of us who work here. So it's hard to know all of it.
I think some of the conversations we've had as part of this group are good reminders that, again, this is where I'm moving in my own scale or spectrum of that education and practice and maybe someday systems change, but like thinking through not always having the answer is okay. I think as advisors, especially, you get into a role, you know the curriculum, you know the schedule, you know all the things, you know how many numbers, heck, you know what the CRNs are before they roll, because they're just, like that. Yeah, so you get used to having the answers, but it's okay to not, and it's okay to listen, and it's okay to be a part of the adaptive conversation instead of just the technical piece. That's a powerful opportunity for the students. And I'm finding in my own experience right now, I'm doing a lot of listening where I don't have answers to, and I don't have solutions. And that's not my position, that's not my role. But my role is to be a safe space for students to come and to talk if they feel comfortable. That's a shift for me. And so I think that's an important, this is a group where the things that we're grappling with, that we're, working through, that we experience that, right? And it's okay to sit in that uncomfortable place where you don't have an answer to everything all the time. And yeah, so I've found that is a really immensely helpful thing that helps me be better at what I do, or at least strive to be better at what I attempt to do. I'm really not owning that I'm doing anything, actually. So let me couch everything.
I think one of the interesting, I mean, we have wonderful conversations, within the space of our CAPE meetings, and it's refreshing to be able to be part of that, because I think one of the things that it is showing us, we talked about change agents and like sort of champion change. It is a huge change. I mean, in terms of the narrative, how we're gathering and the kinds of things that we're discussing. With social work and Native American studies is my skill set. A big focus for me is cultural humility practice in higher ed and in the space of professionalism, just in general. And what is the need of that? And it's kind of a clean your own side of the street sort of thinking, if you will, just in sort of basic theory. But what it allows us to do is start having conversations about how we ourselves identify and then how our students identify. And when we're talking in the space of diversity and sort of that really complex landscape of individuals' identities, it really calls us in this space and actually tasks us with the sort of thing that we're doing as CAPE to really examine that piece and try and listen. And why we're even here today is to hear from the student experience in large part and say, what is it that we need to be doing to better accommodate you in your space? And that comes from a mental health perspective. That comes from a number of gender equity issues and identities, comes from a scope of racial identities and cultural practices and differences and so forth, and uniqueness. And how does that all fit into the space of higher education? And how does that affect communication and interpersonal relationships on campus, and even the kinds of fears we experience day to day in the space? And where do you go to process that information? How can you make connections with people that are going to actually assist you navigate the space successfully within considering all of that? So college is not a one size fits all necessarily, particularly from the student perspective. There's a lot of different fits that are in there. So when coming to CAPE, this was really my hope in this space. I've heard, like I said, some really refreshing sort of conversations. And then we've been able to sort of affect the outer sphere and say, okay, maybe we can be moving toward certain actions that are going to sort of broaden our reach and impact. Yeah, and I'm really enjoyed that part.
I think this is a good moment to just like ask from the student experience, what aren't you getting in advising that you need? Like we asked, what do you need? But like, are you getting that stuff that you need, or are you not getting that stuff? Like this is, I think, a time for like a wish list of everything that your hopes and dreams for your advising experience is. And like, we will make note of it and like push for these things to change to make sure every student is getting the baseline of what they need. So is there anything that you need that you aren't getting?
That way. I think one of the things that I feel like a lot of times the outreach I get, like, thoughts that to have like some follow up that's more like and not like I need to check this off my boss. Also, anything to do with summer financial aid, no, it doesn't.
That's fair.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? I think that's such helpful and kind of affirming in some way. I don't want to speak for affirming for me, hearing that follow-up, and it doesn't have to be a lengthy email or a message or a voicemail, but it matters that you are reaching out about something other than a task or a technical piece, right? Knowing that we have great tools. Our university has invested in systems that I think make your progress toward degree more consistent, knowing we have a decentralized advising model, and so we have to have these tools in order to hold people accountable and make sure that they get what they need to be successful. But try to ask this without being awkward about it, and I'm not achieving that, but are the tools helpful? Do you feel like you can navigate them? Are we somehow missing the mark in focusing on a tool instead of the human experience, or are both important? I don't mean to put you on the spot, so that goes to anyone, and I don't know what the answer is to that, but I'm just curious if people have thoughts and opinions.
I had like 20 weeks next over the summer. I had no idea that was how I logged up.
Yeah, it was a rambling one, but really, in your experience, in the student experience, and thinking about what you need, have we sort of lost our course or our path in focusing efforts on these technical pieces? Or is that important to you? I mean, yeah. Did that make sense?
Yeah. So like, sorry, you're just gonna get a lot of questions now. So like when your advisor reaches, is it very then like you have an alert, you have a case open, you're failing, like just kind of like it is what it is, instead of like, how are you? Are you okay right now? Is that more so like what you're looking for? Okay.
Now, I always thought that navigate, like those alerts to navigate went to the student email, not just like living in your navigate. Yeah, why would you go check navigate?
Yeah. So
Probably.
it depends on how they're entered, what kind of alert they're entered as. But I think, yeah, that's helpful to hear.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Just to quickly speak to what you were mentioning and talking about, I think Trio has really sort of set the path on that kind of accessibility, though. Again, you could hear just from the numbers that doesn't service all of student need. Similarly with Montana 10 as well, we have an even smaller cohort. But part of the function that's built into us is to see if what you're talking about is something that actually needs to be addressed. And we actually now have numbers to bear that out. And that's really been, I think, the exciting thing for us within the program of Montana 10 is recognizing that that is a real need for students, a place for, I mean, literally, even sometimes uninvited, to have an advisor like check in maybe once a week, especially if you're a student who's really sort of relying on that kind of reassurance. And so part of that is building confidence with students, modeling behaviors, also giving students a place to go to just sort of unload. And I know that if I may speak to it, we have a crying corner in our office. It's a place where you can go and be like, okay, could you leave me?
Where is this now?
You both, yes. Those are advisors as well. But again, right, yeah, the crying corner is out. So recognizing those pieces with students and what I think what we're trying to do is expand that to make that more available to a broader spectrum of students. Oh.
I realize we're at time, so Lacey's probably about to feel them staring in the window. I just want to say I'm embarrassed earlier. I said 300 students for Trio, 375. I only worked there for 5.5 years. You would think that I would remember the actual number.
But thank you for providing feedback for us and for being interested in like our stories and where we're coming from as well. If anybody here has something further that they would like to share, they're welcome to reach out, I think, to any of us. And again, like this can be anonymous, but I'm already making a note, like I'm changing how I reach out to students with alerts and cases, because it's like a mix of tech, like this is the problem, I need to solve it because this is my job, but also like, are you okay? So it needs to be more like centered on that. And then the summer financial aid thing, I think very well, so there could be a workshop done by financial aid on summer financial aid, and that's not that hard to do. So, yeah, so thank you really so much for, and please provide feedback anytime to any of us. We're always here to listen, and we really want to make the advising experience at UM special for every student and good for every student as well. So
And our contact info is on the UAC website now, or it's going?
it's going to be, so, yeah, you can, I guess, Google us. That's horrible to say, but, I don't know how else. Oh, yeah, we have cape@umontana.edu. Yeah. Just a little over a year. We started last July. Yeah, not too long, yeah.
Well, I'm going to button everything up. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your great discussion and your time this morning. Then would you mind?